Welcome everyone to the Amaranth All Candidates Debate. My name is Doug Harkness. I'll be your moderator tonight. This forum was organized by the Dufferin Board of Trade with support from the Township of Amaranth. This forum is being live streamed via Zoom, and the recording will be posted on the DBOT website later this week. We will begin tonight by sharing this land acknowledgement statement. We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that Dufferin County resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Tyanatanti, Atawandaron, Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples. We also acknowledge that various municipalities within the County of Dufferin reside within the treaty lands named under the Haldimand Deed of 1784 and two of the Williams Treaties of 1818. Treaty 18, the Nottawasaga Purchase, and Treaty 19, the Adjetons Treaty. These traditional territories upon which we live and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions. It is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways, and its resources. The Dufferin Board of Trade is a grassroots, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization with a passion for helping local business thrive. One of the key ways DBOT does this is by being the voice of business in Dufferin and advocating on behalf of business needs. Tonight's event allows the public to meet the candidates and hear their views on important issues impacting life and work in Amaranth and Dufferin County. Tonight's forum will begin with each candidate's 3-minute introduction. We will then move into the question period. If anyone in the group would like to ask a question, please post it on the chat and I'll read it later on. We will invite members of the audience, any of them to give questions. Please wait until the moderator acknowledges you to begin speaking. Questions should be addressed to all candidates, and candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. Our candidates can view the countdown timer on the screen, as can the rest of you. The timer will begin after the question has been asked, and will give a 30-second warning to indicate when time is up. As the forum comes to a close, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to give a closing statement. Candidates drew numbers a few minutes ago to determine tonight's speaking order. We will begin with candidate 1 and move on down the line. For the second question, we will begin with candidate 2 and move on down the line again. We will repeat this process throughout the evening. I will remind candidates that control of the floor rests with the moderator, and I ask for your respect and cooperation in that regard. I will now introduce our first candidate for their opening remarks, and that will be Victor Ingmar Pon. Victor.
Great, thanks, Doug. Hello, everyone. My name is Victor Ingmar Pon, and I'm asking for your vote to be councillor for the Township of Amaranth. Firstly, I want to thank all the public for attending this debate. Thank you, fellow candidates, and special thanks to the Dufferin Board of Trade for putting it on this evening. It's very much appreciated. So why vote for me? Well, I bring a fresh set of eyes to council, both from a new to council perspective and from a career perspective. I bring 20 years of working in live event space, which is completely project and timeline driven. I'm used to working with multifaceted teams and driving towards deadlines where there isn't an option to go past the date and time to launch. In my role as National Director of Digital Sales and Innovation, I worked alongside government groups at all levels, large associations and corporate enterprises, helping them achieve their goals and reinforce strategies. So I look forward to parlaying some of that experience to the council here in Amaranth and help do the same. So I'm very passionate about our community. I believe we need to rely less on our bordering towns to drive our culture and appetite for events. We need to gather in our community and in partnership with our residents. We are diverse, we're interesting, and multifaceted. Our demographics are changing, and the opportunity is here to celebrate and create a community that is rooted in acceptance and belonging. I'm a father of 4. My wife and I moved here in 2009, 13 years ago. And at that time, we had 2 young daughters, and not far after, we quickly expanded to our brood of 4. So our eldest is now in her first year at the University of Guelph, and our youngest is in grade 5 at Laurel Woods. All 4 kids have gone through Laurel Woods, great school. So Amaranth is home. And over the past few years, Dufferin has seen a booming population growth, especially in our bordering towns and communities, particularly north and south of us. Development and density is affecting our township. So Amaranth has historically been a thoroughfare, we know that. However, we're seeing an ever-increasing volume of vehicular traffic on our main arteries, We need to level up infrastructure. We need to increase our diligence in safety measures to help keep our shared uses spaces as safe as possible, with reduced speed, community zones, and consistent intersections that make travel through Amaranth as stress-free for drivers, cyclists, pedestrians, and residents enjoying their homes alike. So we need to level up our standards and preach a Vision Zero philosophy. So I look forward to helping solve the issues important to our residents. I'm eager to learn and better understand the ebb and flow of our municipality and council, and working with our partner communities to drive efficiencies in services and discover new ways to deliver sustainable solutions. We need to protect our watershed. We need to empower our agriculture and design for growth and density, and celebrate along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. I just want to apologize. I'm having some video trouble here. Apparently, internet isn't quite as strong in Mono where I am as it is in Amaranth. So I'll try on my phone for a few minutes and then we'll go back to the big screen. So next up is candidate Chris Garretts. Chris.
Thanks, Doug. Chris Garretts. I'm running for mayor. And as I was going to mention later, one of the things I'm happy about is that I was involved in the SWIFT program that's going to bring some reliable internet to Amaranth and also to parts of Mono. So hopefully, Doug, you can get upgraded pretty soon. So I'm terrible at writing speeches. I think it just stresses me out. So I usually just wing it. So I'm Chris. I've been a resident here for about 45 years, except for when I was away at school. So we lived in Laurel first in what is Eric Potts' farm, and then spent some time north of the dump on 4th Line before we settled over on 10th Line north of 20 Side Road. Rhonda and I have been married 20 years, and after school we moved back and raised our 3 kids here. My motivation for running now for mayor is the same as it was in 2014 and 2018. It's simply to help people. It's corny and cheesy, but that's the fact. I enjoy helping any way I can, whether it's high level policy things or helping a resident that needs to navigate approvals to get a driveway installed. It's all satisfying. That's really what I like. So this past a couple terms, the things I'm most proud of are working with the youth to give them more opportunities to both get involved in activities and in committees. So I started a couple additional committees, both of which had youth members as full voting members, so the youth could get some input into their community, and along with that, the increased engagement. So with those 2 committees, we increased the number of residents that were involved in the community by about 25 people, which is pretty big. So very excited about that. I'm really excited to get to the question portion. So I will stop 30 seconds early. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Next up, we'll hear introductory remarks from Heather Foster. Heather, over to you.
Yes, good evening. And no, the Wi-Fi in Amaranth is certainly no better than in Mono. As a matter of fact, I would say where I am, it's probably not quite as good. I've been on council for 3 terms. I've lived in Amaranth for over 30 years. My partner's lived in Amaranth all his life. I have certain ideas for council. I would like a united council. We had a lot of stress this past term. Things weren't perhaps as smooth as they could have been. We need to get our finances under control. We need to make sure that we have money put away for bridges. As a lot of people in the north section know, we are rather lacking a bridge on one road. We need consistent budgeting, and we need to ensure that we do not borrow beyond our means. Aside from that, I love this community. I've moved around quite a bit in my life before I settled here, and I'm proud to call this community home. And I'm going to cut it short as well, because I think that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Next up, we'll hear from candidate Brad Metzger. Brad.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending. I'm generally terrible at reading a speech, but I figured tonight was probably the night I need to make sure I touch on all my points. I've resided in Dufferin County for 20 years now and Amaranth for over 14. Our family, my wife Carolyn, sons Eric and Jacob, call a six-liner home where we enjoy the labors of our small hobby farm. Past few years have brought with them amazing family memories, especially with our youngest and my first. And along with those came many challenges that one would never wish upon another person. And sometimes these challenges in our lives are exactly what awakens something within us. And in my case, it did. And I realized there was just something more I needed to do for the community I live in, to give back. So that's why I'm here seeking your vote to afford me the opportunity to serve residents of Amaranth as one of your counselors. Over the course of 2022, I've taken the time to attend many of the council meetings. This has provided me an opportunity to understand many of the issues being dealt with, as well as getting to know how the current council and staff themselves operate. The residents of the township deserve an inclusive, unified, fiscally responsible, and informed council. My 20+ years working in the construction industry and civil engineering education brings with it not only the construction experience, but also the experience having worked with many different municipalities and permit approvals. Having advanced my career over the years to a senior leadership role, I've gained valuable corporate and political experience. I understand what it means to not only lead a team, but how to operate as part of a team, making significant business decisions. I've had the experience of negotiating several settlements with different labor unions, negotiations that demand not only patience, but calculated strategy. My desire to serve the residents of this township brings with it no personal agendas, but rather desire to bring value everywhere possible and ensuring we return the township to fiscal health. As a unified council, I truly believe that we can work to expedite planning approvals, thus attracting investment in our township while acting responsibly to protect important agricultural lands. Our roads and bridges require improvements. We will need to work together to find economical solutions to deliver more with the funds available to us. Our fiscal health as a township needs to remain a primary focus of our future. This does not mean that we should not continue spending to maintain and improve our township, but rather that we ensure we do so responsibly within our bounds with the interest of our fiscal long-term health. Our township's population is growing and becoming very culturally diverse. We need to embrace this. As council, we will also need to welcome events and attractions to Amaranth, promoting our beautiful township, as well as the revenue they bring, such as the Coming Home Music Festival and the International Flying Match. I'll cut it short there because I am out of time. So thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Next up, we'll hear from candidate Susan Graham. Susan.
Thank you. Good evening, friends and neighbors. Over 30 years ago, my husband and I moved from Toronto to beautiful Waldemar, where we raised our 2 children. I am now retired and can devote my time and attention to the township of Amaranth. My career as a law clerk for over 30 years with the same local law firm has provided me with the legal knowledge in dealing with municipalities and municipal law. This legal expertise will be an asset to the township. I have no hidden agendas and look forward to representing the residents of Amaranth on council. My commitment to you is that I will never take it for granted that I represent you, the taxpayers of Amaranth. I have always been a very active resident in the township. I was able to bulldoze through red tape and had Enbridge gas brought into Waldemar with family and friends. We ran a sausage on a bun booth at the Grand Valley Fall Fair, which money was donated towards park equipment and a party for the kids. I have volunteered as a baseball coach and recently a soccer coach. I also volunteer at the schools in Dufferin County helping students read. To you, I bring integrity, honesty, transparency, and a desire to work with my fellow council members as a team in a productive manner. I am passionate about efficient spending and community unity, and I'm ready to work hard to bring a strong voice to council. Regarding community unity, we need to bring our community together. We are privileged to have gate farmers who provide quality meat, garden centers, home businesses, and many entrepreneurs. We have the township's recreation facilities where we could hold bazaars, movie nights, euchre nights, etc. In Waldemar, there's a 15-acre parcel of land running along the Grand River, which could be made into beautiful trails, sports pad, ice rinks. We have the ability to stand together and make Amaranth great. I've listened to and participated in the Township of Amaranth meetings for the last 4 years. And although the transparency with the township has improved, there is still room for improvement in keeping the residents of Amaranth more informed. Spending our tax dollars on frivolous vendettas is not acceptable. We need to have a unified council working for all residents. I am proud and passionate about the Township of Amaranth and committed to represent and speak on your behalf, and look forward to the opportunity and challenge to represent the residents of the Township of Amaranth. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next up, we'll hear from candidate Tricia Linton. Tricia.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening to my fellow candidates, and good evening to everyone this evening, and thank you for your time. My name is Tricia Linton, and I'm running to be your counselor. And I just want to thank the Board of Trade for creating this platform for us to be able to speak about our passions. I've come from Milton. I am a mom of 3, and one of the reasons why, because of Milton and its growth, we wanted to spend time and be family and have that moment of time where we can raise our children and breathe clean air and just be joyful in that we can have that time and that opportunity. So why I'm running for council is I'm just passionate. I've loved Dufferin County. I lived in Wilmer for quite some time and then moved to Amaranth. And in living in Amaranth, I also worked in Shelburne at the time, and it was really good, and I enjoyed that. One of the passions that I do have is about the wetlands here in Amaranth and keeping them, and not being consumed about what's happening outside from other townships. Another thing that I would like to address is the speeding and the fatalities that are happening on our rural roads. That is a great concern to me. And because of working in the Upper Grand District School Board, you see that we have a population that is growing exponentially, and that's in our neurodiversity group, and they live everywhere. And I think it's of great concern that we address as a team and a newly formed team as council about the speed limits and the speed that's happening and the fatalities and the number of fatalities, because it's of great concern to me, as well as we're coming into new thoughts and how we are families and having extended families live with us, and having to address that, where we live, we might have to extend our homes and build in order to have our in-laws or our family members coming and live with us. And as I just spoke about neurodiversity, we're thinking about how they are coming into adulthood and they're going to have to live with their parents, and making that exception as well. So I'm just here as a fresh face, 5 years in Amaranth, and just wanting to be a part of the process and being a part of the team. And I just thank you for your time, and I thank you for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. Next up, we'll hear from candidate Gail Little. Gail. Gail, you need to unmute for us.
Oh, sorry. I should know that by now. So I will start again. Thank you and good evening to everyone. I'm very proud to be a longtime resident and Amaranth property owner. I moved to the township many years ago when I purchased my first farm. My family and I now own and operate a growing agricultural enterprise, as well as a business in the heavy construction industry. 2 weekends ago, I was excited to be in Kemptville at the International Plowing Match, on hand for the ceremonial passing of the flag to Amaranth and Grand Valley, the official 2023 hosts of the event. All the participating farms will be located in Amaranth, and I would like to extend special thanks to the farmers who have committed their fields for this high-profile undertaking. Last weekend, I participated in the Dufferin Farm Tours, returned to its annual one-day event that showcases the farms in the area. As I have been a key organizer for many years, I truly appreciate the overwhelmingly positive feedback from the public who take this opportunity to visit and learn about some of our very diverse agricultural operations located throughout the county. And to add to the excitement, this morning at 8 a.m., I welcomed one of Amaranth's newest residents with the birth of my 7th grandchild at Headwaters Hospital. So thank you to everyone who contributes to this community to make it a safe and welcoming place. As growth within and around our community continues, we need to be prepared to meet the increased demands of our shared services and increased traffic on all our roads. We will need to invest in improved infrastructure and long-term planning for our community well-being. Council consists of 5 independent individuals who bring their unique personal experiences and backgrounds to develop governing policies that are fair, consistent, and effective. Except for a very few limited agenda items, all discussion and decision-making at council is to be open and transparent to the public. All members are governed by a procedural bylaw and by a code of conduct. I have served as a member of Amaranth Council for the past 8 years and look forward to continuing in this role, as well as having a seat at the county council table where my experience will count. If elected, I hope to continue to shine a bright light on Amaranth with the ongoing promotion of our happy and healthy community. And I am most definitely looking forward to the creative structures of our 2022 Bale Trail. So I look for your support in this upcoming election. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. I'm not sure if we still have Doug or if he is having technical difficulties. Thank you, Gail. We will move on now to Andrew, please.
Good evening, everyone. So my name is Andrew Stirk. I've been a resident of Amaranth County since 2016. My wife and I bought our first property up here when we were moving out of Brampton. We had a family farm and our family business, an auto shop down there. And we've grown up in Dufferin County. Specifically, I grew up in Orangeville, graduated from ODSS, went to Sheridan College in Brampton for business, actually, marketing. We have an auto shop of 43 years. It's a family legacy from my dad to myself that we've also moved to Amaranth in 2016 as well. So we've got a history with Dufferin County. We've got an agricultural background. I have a farm here that I actually have relatives that do farm it for me. My grandfather and great-grandfather were veterinarians in the Peel and Dufferin County. I have an understanding of the agricultural world, albeit I didn't make my career in it. It's something that's still close to me based on kind of my upbringing. The reason that I've run for council was, in all honesty and all initialness, was that I did not see a lot of candidates getting close to the deadline. And one of the things that's kind of came to the forefront as I got older and we looked at, the democracy system we have was that I'd rather see a large selection versus a system where people just get acclaimed simply because they threw their name in the hat. So I've always had an interest in politics. I think my parents could probably tell you that 6 years old, I was writing letters to, I think, Bob Ray about the Moraine Ridge and the dump systems that they were looking to put in. So I don't remember that, but I'm going off that from history from them. But it's something I've always taken a general interest in. So when the opportunity presented itself that I felt like we needed more selection as we got closer to the deadline, I thought it's worth an attempt. I've spent a lot of years being able to work in the automotive business world, motorsports world. We've run successful race series, like I have run successful race series with my family. We've done a lot of time working with people. So I feel like there's a lot of people skills I bring to the table that if I was given the privilege of being elected, I feel like would be very useful. No hidden agendas, to be quite honest and open. I've not been an active member in looking at a lot of the council meetings. Not that I haven't paid attention. The background information is a wonderful age when you can look at PDFs and read things without attending all the time. But I certainly would give my effort to being an active member of council, should I be given that opportunity, and would love to be able to contribute to a community that I really do enjoy and love, and have made both my home and my place of business, hopefully for a very long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Next up, we'll hear from candidate George Gretka. George.
Hi, my name is George Gutka, and I was raised in Romania, and I came in 1979 in Canada, which was a blessing for us because we're running from a communist country. And when we came in here, we just looked to do things for us and, to be successful. So in the early 80s, I bought a farm in Amaranth Township, and I built a house in Amaranth. So since early 1987, I'm let's say a resident of Township of Amaranth. And I always tried to be involved with certain things when I was necessary. And I remember quite a while back when they were the township were trying to sell the dump. It was an issue that where was a company interested to buy the garbage dump to bring the brown soil, which has contaminated soils from Toronto, and we were able to fight that thing. And also the reason I'm trying to get, I want to be involved and I want to running for deputy mayor is that I want to put my values and my knowledge into this, into the township, helping the people. I always, as a HVAC technician and a union leader, I always put the people first, not myself. So I always serve my colleagues, hardworking Canadians, and for the last 20 years in the union business. So I always try to do what is the best for the people, and I always try to succeed in whatever I plan to. So being around in Amaranth all these years, I've seen quite a few things where it happened, which wasn't proper, especially in the last 4 years. There's been financial, a lot of issues with the bridges being really, we have almost like 6 to 7 bridges, which are all at zero life expectancy. We like to have a plan. I don't, like people are talking, we have to be transparent. We were canvassing in, let's say, in Amaranth, and people are upset because they don't know what's going on. And we have to learn that we have to discuss, and we have to be open like a book and trying to tell the people exactly what's going on, which it didn't happen. All these years, it's always maybe run by the office people, by the bureaucrats. Our responsibility is that to be involved as, councillors, like let's say deputy mayor, mayor, and anybody involved into the township, we have to be involved properly in every decision what is made. We don't have to let those decisions to be made by certain people, and then the township has to pay for it. So that's the reason I'm running for deputy mayor. And I would like to put my knowledge to use and to work for the township and for the people. Thank you.
Thank you, George. We'll now move on to the question portion of the night. If any of the audience has any questions, please post them up in the team chat, and I'll read them out to all the candidates. We'll continue on with the same speaking order for the first question, and then we'll start moving down. So are there any questions from the floor before I start asking some of the great ones that I have? It would be much better if they were, good old Amaranth questions rather than some of the ones I have might be generic. I'm sure there's a stampede of people typing away. Okay, well, I'll start with one of mine, and that'll give everyone a chance to get their questions up there. So we're going to start with Councillor candidate Victor Ingmar Pond. Victor, you're going to get the first crack at this question. I'll only read it once unless people want it read over. You can ask for it again. It's pretty straightforward. What are the key infrastructure projects that need to be addressed in Amaranth over the next term of council?
Well, I believe we have some deadly intersections. We have to update intersections for sure, and bring some consistency, I think, to those intersections across the board. that's a huge piece of the infrastructure build. I think there's different ways to achieve that. I think looking at roundabouts is something that I think we need to do at our deadliest intersections, something to slow people down. That's number one. Our bridges, obviously, we have some infrastructure there that we need to build and understand how to develop that and what's the best plan forward. We need to look at those things from a council standpoint and figure out what makes sense and what's the first thing that needs addressing. So those are items that will have to be looked at deeply and discussed. I also think that overall we need to look at some of our public spaces and maybe develop them for public use. So just the parks and recs areas that we have are great, but I think we can interject some new looks and feels into those spaces and develop them a little bit differently for some activities here in town, whether that's some use for like different types of sporting. If we can get some like skateboarding and some scooter type spaces would be a lot of fun in our own space, would be great. And just design something for the kids to come to and flock to would be fantastic. So those are things I would love to look at.
Thank you, Victor. It looks like we're having some trouble with our timer, so I'll hand time for the next few, and I'll warn you when you get to 30 seconds. That sound fair to everyone? Till we can get this little bug out. We don't usually have this issue. So the same question, Chris Garrett, it's over to you.
Thanks. I think roads and bridges is a no-brainer for everybody. That's a constant maintenance issue that needs to be addressed. Beyond that, I do have some traffic concerns. One being the proposed Shelburne bypass, which would see a large bypass go along 30 Side Road right by Amaranth Country Estates, Devonley subdivision, and the new Primrose Estates. So I think we need to push back on that. The other very, very serious one, in my opinion, is 10th line and 109 in Waldemar, especially if Sarah Properties ever develops. So I've been talking to the county and the town of Grand Valley about an alternate access there, because that intersection is very dangerous. So that sort of ties into Vic's stop sign or intersection comment, and of course the parks and recreation. I think we've got Kerry Gallard's on the call here. He formed with a little help from me a parks committee that 8 years ago spent about a year drafting a plan for the Waldemar Park. That was presented to council and with a request that money start being put aside 8 years ago. $0 have been put aside in that amount of time to upgrade the park. So I'd like to revisit that. It's a beautiful area, as Susan mentioned, and there's a lot of opportunity there. So we could talk all night about other projects we'd like to do, but those are, I guess, the top three for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Looks like we got our timer issues sorted out, but I will hand time as well, just in case something stops and then we have some duplication. Heather Foster, your chance at this question.
Yes, good afternoon, good evening. Roads and bridges, as Chris stated, is a subject that could be spoken about for hours on end. Yes, we do have issues with our roads. At the last council meeting, it was brought up, and the council meeting prior to that we need to have four-way stops at least two of the intersections within Amaranth. We are still a rural community, and we're doing the best that we can with what we've got. A number of our roads are county roads, so we have to depend on the county in order to upgrade what we have. As far as our infrastructure and our bridges are concerned, we need to depend on the other levels of government in order to get funding for these bridges. We successfully got funding for the bridge on 20 Side Road so that it became a 2-lane bridge as opposed to the single-lane bridge that it was. And then we got funding for paving for 20 Side Road. We need to continue applying for the funding, and we need to work hard at getting grants in order to ensure that we can significantly increase our infrastructure. We can't do it on our own. As many of the other townships have discovered, trying to do the bridges and everything by yourself, unless you increase the tax burden, it's not going to help. We need to increase our industrial and commercial sites so that we can have additional tax income, that we don't need to rely on the residential people for it. It's a roundabout, and I don't like them. Anyway, we do have a lot of park spaces. I've been around to a lot of the parks recently and discovered that people with young children don't like to go to the park. They have their own park setups in their backyards. So let's sit down, think outside of the box, and use our park spaces differently than what they've been used for in the past. We need a little, yes, okay. We need to increase them. We need to make them better.
Thank you, Heather. Your time's up.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, that's fine.
Next up, we'll hear from candidate Brad Metzger. Brad.
Good evening, everyone. Is my audio working okay? Because I seen there was a comment earlier that it wasn't great. It's good? Okay. Roads and bridges are number one for myself, to be very honest. The gravel roads in this township, I think we all know that have lived here for a while, come times in the spring where they're almost impassable for, depending on the vehicle you drive. We need to start working on doing what we can to fix them so they do stand up, and maybe someday down the road they can be improved further. Our bridges, as we've touched on, there's too many of them that are in disrepair at this point, including the one that's gone. And to Heather's point, I think she's very right. We have to work very hard to find funding from other sources, partnerships to get things built, but we also have to become creative in how we're going to build those bridges. There's only so much we can do with the conservation authorities and their rules, but there are alternative means of designing bridges that can be more economical and we get more value for our money. So I think there's a lot of work to be done there. Intersections, without a doubt. I live north of 20th Side Road. I've come up on accidents too many times on 20th, a couple of them being fatals that, quite honestly, they hit home every time you see them. Quite honestly, you see flashing lights and you're worried about it. I don't think roundabouts are the way to go. They're extremely expensive. And in my mind, I would say for the intersections we're dealing with, maybe not the best use of money. Not saying they're a waste, but maybe not the best use. I would look to four-way stops and enhanced speed control devices in and around those intersections that absolutely grab the driver's attention. It can be done. The Parks and Rec, I've got to be honest, I need to dig into that a little more as to exactly what would need attention the most. The plot of land in Waldemar spoke about along the river. I would say that has got to be one of the biggest assets we've got that could draw the most people.
Thank you, Brad. Your time's up. Sorry, folks. Next up, we have candidate Susan Graham. Susan.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with what Heather is saying. Our roads and our bridges, we have to get funding for this. There's just not enough money in the till to pay for all these things that need to be done. I think our roads department have been doing a great job on our roads so far. I know the spring is coming and it's a nightmare, but after being here for 30 years and being the second house in our subdivision, I've seen quite a bit changes in the roads, and they're getting rougher and tougher. And I think we really have to look at this in a very serious manner and look at our funding and what funding we can get from the government. With regards to our parks, I think we need to use these parks, generate people to come to these parks, have festivals, like Mr. and Mrs. Bosenberger had the festival. That was a great idea. We can do these things. We just have to all work together. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Susan. Next up, we have Tricia Linton.
Hi, everyone, and good evening again. Everyone is talking about roads and bridges, and I totally agree. And where the money is from, we definitely have to leverage our governments, and provincial and federal. When I think about the speeds, I think that's something that we can address and talk about. when we become that team and that council, and talking probably to OPP and having our roads serviced more in order to slow down traffic, in order to have the speeders at least slow down, in consideration of how many fatalities that have happened in this past year alone, and just alone what I witnessed and almost incurred myself a couple days ago. And when we're talking about parks and recs and for children, splash pads are a very big draw for all children, especially from the summertime. So I definitely believe that fundraising will definitely have to be something that's on the table. And there's just many discussions that we'd have to have, but also listening to the constituents and hearing what they really need and how they may be coming up with innovative ideas as well. And having that understanding. Winter maintenance is we thank the crews that come out and do winter maintenance, but I've seen so many times that in the rural roads, especially going past 7th line, many trucks are flipped in the winter time and so forth. So there's definitely work to be done, but there's also discussions to be had in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Tricia. Next up, we have Gail Little. Gail.
Hi, yes, thank you. The roads have been mentioned frequently and they are of concern, and the need to replace several of our bridges is also paramount. There is not always funding opportunities available from other levels of government, and we cannot continue to just rely on that as a funding source for our projects. I feel that our council this past term missed out on a great opportunity to borrow infrastructure money at 1.5%. Instead, we are now faced with construction costs that have increased anywhere from 10% to 100%. So any future bridge work we will be doing is going to cost us quite a bit more than it has in the past couple of years. I am in favor of using our parks more, of making sure that we have the facilities that our residents want to meet their needs. We had a young student, a 6-year-old, who wrote to us to address her wishes, and I would like to meet with some other people to address those needs as well. I also would like to see walking trails and cycling for bicycles that connect to our urban areas, so people don't have to rely on the car to just go into town or to go to their schools that are nearby. Our fringe subdivisions should be connected with paths that people can walk on and cycle on to get to those urban areas. And that's something I hope we can work on in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Next up, we'll hear from candidate Andrew Stirk.
The difficult part about going this late is you kind of hear all the points hit on and you're kind of sounding like you're just regurgitating a lot of the same points. And to be fair, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either, because a lot of the points being hit on with bridges and roads are accurate. Being the business owner I am on County Road 11, the Dufferin County roads, which are above the Amaranth system, are kind of one of the major concerns we have with the industrial area. I do like to see that the industrial base is growing out where we are, back to the taxation base. The problem that concerns me is that we've let, I see there's someone who might not be able to hear me. So can everyone hear me okay? Am I?
No, can't hear you.
No, nothing. Okay. Let me know if this gets any better. One of the bigger problems is trying to deal with some of these major roadways, I think, in and around our industrial areas, to try to give both the businesses and the commuters in that area a better opportunity to get around safer. You look at 109 as you head out towards Trafalgar Road. I think, not knowing how Dufferin County, not being on the council, but not knowing how Dufferin County has looked at some of these things, I think sending representatives to Dufferin County boards to talk about some of these things, to try to figure out how we improve upon some of our major infrastructure roads, while also finding ways to deal with, again, our own roads within the Amaranth County control is essential. The bridges discussion could go on for a long time. It's something that since I've moved here, the moment I got here, my neighbors were talking about it. I didn't know it was an issue, but immediately did. So I believe that, looking into these and trying to find reasonable short-term, long-term fixes to deal with them is essential to what we need to look at immediately. And I will attempt to fix this microphone immediately.
Uh-oh.
Thank you, Andrew. Next up, we're going to hear from candidate George Grutka. George.
George, you're on mute.
George, you're on mute.
Okay. Yeah, all right. Sorry about that. Thank you. I think what we have to do to fix the fiscal mismanagement in Amaranth that has led to a recent increase in taxes. And also, it wasn't a plan for the last 20 years or even more. And as everybody, maybe not everybody knows, East Garafrax has been in our office for the last 22 years, and they didn't pay rent at all. And we used to share the office with them, and Amaranth used to pay 60% almost of everything. And East Garafrax wasn't paying, any rent, almost a value. If you look at that, like a $5,000 a month, and all this 20 over $1.5 million, 1.2 million has been, missed out of that. And when they were asked to pay $5,000 a month, they packed it in and they moved on. So this is one of the area where we mismanage. So we have to look into that, look at the finances, and then we have to build a reserve fund to implement improvements on the roads. And we have also to tackle all forms of the government, let's say provincial, federal, to be able to get money, to be able to, with their assistance to develop and repair those bridges as much as we can. If we don't push these issues to the higher level, you're not gonna get it. But on the same token, let's bring some big businesses in the Amaranth, like on the third line down by 109, we just have parkings for tractor trailers. We have to think beyond that. We have to get businesses that will bring us money, and also they will employ people. We have people going all the way to Brampton, Toronto, everywhere else. Let's look around and to create something which is good for the people of Amaranth, and to create something which is proper and bring business and money closer to town. Thank you.
Thank you, George. So now that everyone's had a chance to answer a question, we're gonna prepare you for life in municipal council. We're gonna change the rules, just like the upper tier governments will do to you several times over the next 4 years. There's a ton of really good questions on the chat, and if we continue on with 2-minute answers, we're only going to get to 4 of them, and I want to get beyond that. So we're going to cut the answer time down to 1 minute. I know some people are still having trouble seeing the timer, so I'll do a verbal 10 seconds for everybody. For those of you that can't see the timer, I'd suggest clicking on the view button on the top right corner of your Zoom screen. Sometimes that's all it is. You just can't see everything. So try that first, because I'm not the technical expert on our board of trade and I'm having no trouble. So maybe try that. So if everyone's okay with that, we're going to move on to our second question. Chris Garrett, our mayoral candidate. Oh, and sorry, the last thing is let's not get a debate going on chat. Candidates, please answer the questions here. So next up, we'll have mayoral candidate Chris Garrett to answer this question. Chris, if elected, will you vote to immediately return to in-person council meetings as well as continue with Zoom?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's important to have a hybrid so that the meetings are accessible to everybody. So prior to COVID, we used to get Bruce Horsley and Larissa Sawyer coming to meetings religiously. Since then, we're getting, I like to joke that we get about 400% increase in viewership because we now have up to 8 people watching a meeting. So I think it's really important. It ties in the transparency and makes it accessible and for everybody, and it potentially makes it more accessible for people that want to run for positions if they know that they have the option to join a meeting remotely. If they're out of town working or something, so definitely. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Same question to mayoral candidate Heather Foster. Heather.
Yes, I agree completely with Chris. Since we have gone to a Zoom format, attendance for council meetings has increased significantly. And the added plus to the Zoom meetings is that it is all recorded, so people can go back and they can actually see the meetings. Before, we would have people coming in. Yes, Bruce and Larissa were the all-time standards. And on occasion, there were people who would come in for a severance and they would stay for a bit longer. But generally, the council chambers were empty. And it's very nice to see. So yes, I would stay with the hybrid so that people have the option of either Zoom or attendance at the township buildings. I find it very lonely there during council meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Brad Metzger. Brad.
I have to agree with both of them, honestly. Being employed full-time, the daytime meetings, obviously, there's an advantage to candidates if there is an option at times to save the drive to the city, to make sure they maximize their time preparing for meetings and attending meetings. And I would definitely say that evening meetings, all council should be there, unless special circumstances, we have that responsibility. But Chris and Heather have both touched on an amazing point in that by having the Zoom option there for the public, without a doubt, I can't see why there wouldn't be a whole lot more attendance. So I absolutely support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Susan Graham. Susan.
Yes, I agree with having the council meetings on Zoom and in person. If I've done the Zoom meetings, sometimes they're infuriating when they go behind closed doors and you don't know when they're going to come back out. But other than that, it's informative. You get all the information that is attached when you go to the Township of Amaranth agendas. There's all the information attached there too, which is what the council members are getting. So yes, I agree. Zoom and in person. I don't mind either one. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Tricia Linton.
I agree with the hybrid. I am chair of the Diversity and Equity and Inclusion Committee for Dufferin County. And I could tell you as chair, it is frustrating because there's such a big disconnect with what people are saying and what people mean. And so therefore, if we can get together and have those conversations and have people join on in Zoom, I think it's wonderful. But it's also good because when you're working as a team, you get more of a feeling for each other and a more of an understanding when you're team building, especially when you're together in the same room. And I find it more efficient. So thank you so much for the question.
Thank you, Tricia. Next up, we'll hear from Deputy Mayor candidate Gail Little.
Yes, thank you. I agree that hybrid meetings will be a great thing to have at our council. We are investing in the technical upgrades necessary to allow this to happen, and that hopefully will happen in the very near future. I agree that it's important for the public to hear and understand the discussions that happen around the council table so that they can be aware of how limited funds are given out, and that some of the things that people think we can do, we simply cannot. And as Doug Harkness said, the rules change frequently. So it's not maybe quite as easy as it might appear to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Andrew Stirk.
So I'm hoping everyone can hear me better now. We've made an alteration. Okay, thumbs up, perfect. So I would go back to the hybrid, or sorry, I would vote for the hybrid. I do enjoy the aspect of being able to go back. Like the modernized world allows you to be able to go back and watch these things anytime you would like to. The in-person aspect, as Tricia and others have hit on, is I think valuable from team building. There's so much more you can accomplish and learn from fellow counselors and everyone else by being together. I truly relish the ability to be able to go back later at a time that's more convenient to me to watch important things. And I think by creating an environment that has both an in-person environment, you get to see people, meet people, talk to people in person, while not losing that ability to be able to go backwards and say, okay, I couldn't make it, I couldn't see it, but I have an ability to go find it now and be able to get up to speed on these things. is valuable, particularly in the world we're in now. So it would be something I would vote for.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll now hear from Deputy Mayor candidate George Grutka.
Yes, there's actually everybody they talk about it, the hybrid, which is great. I still love to see ourselves get together and sit down around the table and talk and come to a conclusion and solve the problems. And I know everybody works or they have different things to do and everything else, but what it is with the Zoom and everything, it's great. And from my understanding, Rogers is putting now fiber optic right across, let's say, township. It's not finished yet. It's going to be a while when it's going to be all finished. And I think we're going to have a good system where you're going to be able to, have a meeting through Zoom and also in person. In person, bring it more personal and close. You can sit with your fellow, let's say, people and talk to them. And
10
then
seconds.
the best. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Our final answer on this one will be from Councillor candidate Victor Ingmar Pon. Victor.
Great, thank you. I mean, coming from the live events industry, absolutely, in-person meetings are phenomenal. But it doesn't detract from how much we learned over the past couple of years of the virtual event space. And hybrid is the way to go. Working with corporations, like I said, government, and like AMO, groups like that develop and put on large events. Hybrid is the move forward. I mean, accessibility is a big piece of the equation. Folks that can't make it to those meetings, from a public standpoint, you're just building accessibility for people that are there. And hey, listen, councillors are people too. When we have to travel or go places, we can still attend meetings. We can still pop in, and I think that's such a huge lift and difference that a hybrid meeting space comes to. But yes, do we want to gather in person and get those conversations around a table? 100%. But hybrid was the way to go, and I would definitely stick to that. And it's a unanimous amongst the crew here. So yeah.
Thank you, Victor. For our next question, mayoral candidate Heather Foster will have the first chance at answering. I graduated my first degree from the University of Guelph in 1994, and I wrote a paper on this topic. So it's been around quite a while and nothing's ever happened. So the question is, what is your position on county amalgamation?
Oh, my good Lord. I remember going to a meeting at the township office, I believe it was 2005, 2006, where county amalgamation was on the table. I am against county amalgamation. In other counties where they have amalgamated, it has been a proven fact that there is no cost savings. The roads don't change. You still need the same amount of equipment. You still need the same amount of people. You still have taxpayers, the same amount of taxpayers. So you still need the same people in the office that are doing the paperwork. You still need, right at the moment, the building department at the county handles most of our building needs. Perhaps we could, get rid of a couple planners, but don't let them know that because it'd get them upset. Amalgamation doesn't work. We have a small community. We need to keep it. And
Thank
I
you,
can
Heather.
see the timer now.
Thank you, Heather. Your time's up. Good. I'm glad you can see it. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Brad Metzger. Brad.
Thank you. I would say I'm mostly against. Being a businessman, I'm open-minded and I'm willing to have the conversations about whether or not there's truly value to be found. But I've got to say very honestly that the thought of amalgamation to me screams loss in service, and it's not something that I would be advocating for without some serious convincing that it actually is going to bring value. Heather raised a lot of very good points there. At the end of the day, the infrastructure is the infrastructure. Tax base is the tax base. There may be some efficiencies gained in the staff end of it, but at the end of the day, as soon as you amalgamate, you're adding additional layers of supervision because there are more people processing what needs to be processed. So I'm not sold that it's going to save money or deliver the same service. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Susan Graham.
As you read this question, I was thinking to myself, boy, we didn't have a very good run with these Scarafrax at the very end. So I think I'm hesitant with regards to because of that. But I think I'm open-minded that I would be willing to listen. I would be willing to see if this is going to benefit us. If it's not benefiting us, why bother? But if there's some benefit to Amaranth to be amalgamated with, I think we have to look at it and look at it very seriously. I don't think that we could just say, no, that we don't want to do that. We don't want to do this. I think we have to look at things and be very open about them. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Tricia Linton.
Thank you for the question. I think it's important to understand what amalgamation brings. We've seen it happen with Toronto and the GTA, and if we're talking from big city to a smaller township, the issue is voices become lost, and we end up losing those voices. And so amalgamation could be good on one end, but I don't think it's right now for us to immediately look at that. We have other greater issues in our township to look at, and I think that's what needs to be addressed. Down the line, maybe in the next term for 4 years, maybe that's something we should look at. But for right now, I don't think it's right, or it's something that I would agree with at this moment for amalgamation. And I just think that it's a dangerous thing for us to look at, because, like I said, there's more important things on the table in terms of our books, in terms of where our infrastructure lands and everything else. So I just think that it's something that we can discuss, but I think it's for something.
Thank you, Tricia.
Thank you.
Next up, we'll hear from Deputy Mayor candidate Gail Little.
Yes, thank you. I have thought about the possibility of amalgamation frequently. I think there are both positives and negatives that go with it. My one concern, and Tricia said the words very eloquently, voices become lost. And that is my biggest concern when there are weighted votes sitting around the county council table. It is the larger urban areas that do get most of the votes and therefore most of the attention. And so sometimes rural areas can become lost in that process. However, there are many ways we can share services as a beginning, much more than we currently do. We actually did have a very positive, almost 25-year relationship with East Scarafraxa that was a model for other areas of our county. So I think that it's something that we should explore further and look at for down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Andrew Stirk.
So one of the aspects of amalgamation that having looked at it and tried to wrap my head around a little bit was the difficulty of what is your partnership going to be? Who are you looking to amalgamate with? If you take it from a business standpoint of two companies coming together, they're bringing equal amounts to the table. If they're not, then which one's not? And what are you gaining from doing that? At the same time, we also grew up in a little bit in Peel region where our family farm used to be. And it was very much a diverse area in that you had a large urban center mixed in with a large rural center. And as others pointed out, the voices tend to get lost on one end or the other. So there's a little bit of concern with it, but I'm also understand that if there's savings to be had or tax bases to increase to help with other services, then I think you have to look at it. But again, it depends on who you be looking to amalgamate with. And I think that's a big question that kind of gets lost in that particular framework of this particular one.
Thank you, Andrew. Next up, we'll hear from Deputy Mayor candidate George Grutka. George.
Yes, amalgamation, I'm looking into it and I think it is what it is. There might be some certain points which are good, but for the time being, any amalgamation, like what had happened in Toronto, like, our candidates mentioned it, you lose the voice of a lot of people. And it's very difficult and to get a township with the same, let's say, the same townships to put together and trying to amalgamate and build a better, let's say, business for the township will be difficult because our township it's got let's say all the equipment to do our jobs, to do the roads and everything else. Everybody's got his own employees and everything else. When you go and amalgamate, always the centers
10 seconds.
was that okay?
10
Oh,
10 seconds.
oh, okay. And it's difficult. I don't think we are okay for the time being to do the amalgamation, because we're going to be very difficult for us to.
Thank you, George. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Victor Ingmar Pon.
Great, thanks. I think the discussion is more, well, it stems from efficiencies, right? And amalgamation and efficiencies are two different discussions. I think, you know, if you were to take townships, you're going to lose your voice when you have less density. People are going to, you know, you have a higher populated township or area, it's going to, you know, I mean, the squeaky wheel is going to get the oil to a certain degree when you talk about amalgamation. So I think delving deeper into partnerships, working on efficiencies is a key in this space. So I think that's where this discussion is really stemming from, and efficiencies aren't necessarily driven up by bringing in and making a larger group or designation. You do lose your voice. I think Trish said that very, very, very nicely. And really focus on what's important for your township. You may lose that when you amalgamate. Your voice becomes depleted.
Thank you, Victor. Next up, we'll hear from mayoral candidate Chris Garrett. Chris.
Thanks. I'm a hard no on amalgamation under any circumstances. I'm more for sharing some services. You can do that effectively and still maintain your voice. You know, Susan Graham and George have previously mentioned the problem with East Garifraxa. They actually did not leave because they were asked to pay rent. They agreed to pay rent, and additionally, since they left, our costs for service delivery have increased $250,000 per year. This is a fact that you can see in the budget. Our admin costs are up 31.93% since they left, and our planning costs are up 83.72%. So a total just under 250,000 because they were effectively forced out under the guise of wanting a token amount for rent. They also paid 40% of all capital and ongoing heat and hydro. So you can do that effectively. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. It seems like we have the timer issue worked out, so I'm going to stop interrupting candidates at 10 seconds. I'll just stop you when your time's up. Sorry for that. We've done this before, and we're having a lot more glitches tonight than we've had in the past, so hopefully they're behind us now. Councillor candidate Brad Metzger, you'll have the first crack at answering the next question. This questioner is concerned with the address 31 Station Street in Waldemer. What are your thoughts on this property, and how can we improve this property? The questioner is highly concerned with the amount of waste being stored that closely to the river.
So I guess the first thing I've got to say in response to that is I'm not familiar with the property, unfortunately. Just being completely honest. The way it's described, it sounds as though there's definitely an environmental concern there that needs to be addressed. If there is waste, I don't know if that's liquid waste, or I wish there was a little more context there. But I guess the best answer it is you'd have to look at what policy is available to force some change there. If it's an old commercial property, then we've got to look at enforcing cleanup of that property and see what options we've got to make that happen. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Susan Graham.
You're mute.
You're muted, Susan.
Unmute.
I got it.
There you go.
Yes, on Station Street. I live right around the corner from them, and it is an eyesore. And I feel so sorry for the people that live across the street that have to look at a 7-foot fence with trailers all over the place. And I would think that one of the things that we should be doing is testing the water constantly, because there apparently he has detergents or chemicals that he uses to do his business. So I think we should be testing the water, making sure that nothing is going into the Grand River. Unfortunately, this property, when it was up for sale, it was sold as a C2 zoning, which is commercial, highway commercial. Barry used to do oil changes in there a long time ago, but I do think it's an eyesore and something does need to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Tricia Linton.
Good evening, and thank you for the question again. I am not personally familiar with 31 Station, but I will say that I think that as council comes together after the election, I think it would be I think it would be important, and I think it would be something that needs to be put on the table, that a lot of our wetlands and a lot of not just 31 Station, but a lot of properties need to have a real concern and a look at in terms of conserving our ecodiversities around Amaranth, because I think that's a concern for a lot of our constituents that live in Amaranth. I think that, and maybe it would be testing our waters, but also reaching out to the conservationists to come out and really survey what is happening around Amaranth. So I thank you so much for that question, and thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. Next up, we have Deputy Mayoral candidate Gail Little.
Yes, thank you. I too am not in the Waldemar area very frequently, so I'm not that familiar with the concerns around the property. I do believe that there needs to be complaints made to council so that they can be addressed. Unfortunately, we do have a complaints-driven system currently with a part-time bylaw enforcement officer. And we need to address environmental concerns if there are some. We can certainly have testing done to assess the situation. If it needs to be looked at, then we should be doing that. Unfortunately, right now, we do not have strong standards for community appearances. That's very difficult to come to a consensus on what might be the definitions we would use. So it's something that needs to be worked on further. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Andrew Stirk.
So similar to other candidates, I'm not overly aware of this property. It's not one that I've passed by, so I don't have a lot of knowledge on what we'd be looking at discussing here. Having owned a business in Amaranth County, we actually fall into part of the watershed on the east end. So we have like a water management plan that's been put in place. I think these are things that, in all likeliness, I've understood haven't necessarily been, I guess, looked at in Amaranth or enforced as much as maybe it should be. Again, there's a little bit of lack of knowledge on my end, just to be forthcoming on that, to be honest. That I need to understand a bit better. Bylaw enforcement is also something that I understand is again, not a full-time status for our area. So, if you were to apply the bylaws to there with any sort of watershed management, there should be means to be able to look at this place and be able to, understand whether it's in compliance or not. But if it's not, then we need to find a way to deal with it.
Thank you, Andrew. Next up, we'll hear from Deputy Mayoral candidate George Rutka.
Yes, like everybody else, I know I'm not familiar with the situation with all that, with that place there. I did see it. And now the way I look at it, it's the ministry, we can get involved into it to make sure that the person who keep all that, let's say, chemicals and everything else, they are stored properly. And also to see if it's they have to come and investigate. That's the only way. I know our township, they have people, they can come around and on basis of complaints to go and check out to see, make sure that everything is okay or is not. But the best way will be to get the ministry involved for that, and then to check it out to make sure that the storage of all that chemicals and whatever chemicals that they keep on that place, they are stored properly, and then they can test the water and everything else. And for testing the water, I guess we got to look into see who is going to pay for the testing of the water and what will be the next step. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Victor Ingmar Pon.
Yeah, hi. Again, I am not aware of the property and the struggles that have gone on that specific property, but it sounds like also that this is the first time that's really been brought to the attention of council in this space. So so hearing that is a bit concerning too. So it can't make assumptions on what's happening in on that property, but I think a few others have said this as well. Have to look at getting some conservation side into this to look at it, do some testing, and I think it's something that we'd have to look at for sure. So this is put in front of council. I mean, all eyes will be on it, and it'll take its due process to go through and figure things out. So I guess to all the folks in public here, if there is something that is looking like there's a problem going on, bring it to the attention of council, and then we can move on that. There's also probably a time I'm hearing too that we might need to do a bylaw review in the next coming little while and see what works and what doesn't.
Thank you, Victor. Next up, we'll hear from mayoral candidate Chris Garrett. Chris.
Thanks. I agree with Ashley in the comment section. Maybe a talk about one specific property is that, this isn't the forum for that. I'm very familiar with it though, received many complaints. I've had the building department make them remove the coverall building, and I believe bylaw enforcement's working with them. Unfortunately, it's going to take some time, but I agree it's a disaster. The bigger question is, what do we do for property standards? And I see Andrew Meelan asked a similar question. I did speak with Larry Meelan a couple of weeks ago about a property near him it's been an ongoing concern. There's properties all over the township. We have one here in Waldemar that's storing boats. So we need some sort of property standards bylaw that's not too restrictive, but still can get these properties cleaned up and at least looking presentable. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Next up, we'll hear from mayoral candidate Heather Foster.
Yes, we discussed this property, as a matter of fact, yesterday at council because the issue had been brought forward. There are issues with the zoning because this property is zoned as a commercial property. We have had the bylaw, as Chris said, bylaw has been out because he has stored other things on the property. We have to ensure that our properties within Amaranth maintain the integrity of what they were to do. This individual is using this property for something other than the local area is confident with. Grand River Conservation does do the water testing. That is what they are set up to do. As far as property standards are concerned, we have looked at a property standard bylaws. It's very complex. It's not as easy as people think. And we want to ensure that the property is a rural property and living property is a living property.
Thank you. Councillor candidate Susan Graham will have the first crack at the next question. In the past 2 years, we have seen governments take freedoms away with mandates such as, I'm assuming that's supposed to be vaccinations and masks. How do you feel about taking freedoms away from your citizens?
I don't believe in taking freedoms away from anybody. I think everybody has a voice. I think everybody should make up their own decisions. They should make up how they feel. I just don't see the point in telling people you have to do this and you have to do that for health reasons. I agreed with putting the masks on to combat the COVID virus, but I think there has to be a time when people have to man up to their own self. And I don't like the government telling me what to do, just like I guess I'm like a child. I don't like anybody telling me what to do, but I think especially when the government is telling you, you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to get vaccine and you have to, although I follow the rule, I still have, and part of me is very hesitant about just jumping on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Tricia Linton.
Thank you for the question. Safety is important. Yes, I agree, but also your freedoms are important. And I think everyone has the right to choose but also to understanding of what keeps us safe. And I think when we have that understanding with the right information, with the right science behind it, and with the right understanding, I think people are, when they're armed with good information, they make informed decisions. And I think being informed is the greatest way. Being educated and informed is the greatest way in order to make sure that you're safe and your family's safe. And I think that's what's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. Next up, we'll hear from Deputy Mayor candidate Gail Little.
Yes, thank you. I truly appreciate that we live in this great country and that we have the freedoms that we have. Compared to so many places around the world, we live in a very rich environment that we need to cherish. I do believe, though, we are part of a community. And as a member of a community, I have certain obligations to other members within my community to make sure that I am keeping them safe as I wish to be safe. We have our children vaccinated for many things at schools that allows them to attend the school system. When the pandemic came, children missed out on a lot of school, in-person school days, and I think that was a great loss to our children. Also, there were a lot of big financial implications that came with businesses being shut down, and it was necessary to get people to go back to work. So sometimes people have to follow the rules.
Thank you, Gail. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Andrew Stirk.
To be quite honest with you, I have a little bit of trouble with the question, only from the standpoint of I don't know the application other than just a character answer by all of us here on what we felt happened over the last 2 years. I'm not, and maybe I'm missing the boat a little bit on this, but the implications from a council answer standpoint, I don't know really gives much on it. I can give a personal stance on where I feel on it. I feel there was aspects that we did as a country and to an extent a world that were acceptable and we need to do. And there are other things that may have been more problematic, as Gail has pointed out. Schooling. I have a 4-year-old now who's really only just had interaction over the last few years because of the way we've had to operate. But there's a lot of personalness to this question that I find very difficult, to be honest with you, because all it really is going to gauge what you felt over the last 2 years. And I don't know if that's really a good indication of outside of what your thoughts have been for the last 2 years on your personality.
Thank you, Andrew. Next up, we'll hear from Deputy Mayor candidate George Grutka.
Yes, in the last 3 years almost now with COVID and everything else, it's been difficult for everybody. I've been working through the COVID every day, and because my job requires, and it's been difficult. And I follow up with all the necessary protections, and also I help my colleagues to get all the first APP, if everything else in Ontario, to be able to be protected. So we've been working for all these years right through it. And I think it's also every person's responsibility to protect themselves and everything else. Do I agree with some rules and everything is being done, people being laid off and fired because they didn't follow up with those rules? It's difficult to judge that. But for the time being, I think we did a great job, and by protecting ourselves, and everybody is safe.
Thank you, George. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Victor Ingmar Pon.
Yeah, from a municipal election standpoint, I mean, it's a tough one to answer, and I don't think there's a lot of control from the municipal standpoint of what we can and can't do. And again, looking back on the 2 years, I think it was just brought up that it is kind of more of a digging question about personal opinion. But I think when you're battling something unknown, there's always a way to look back on things and question. But a shifting, changing threat, I think is a tough thing to call one way or the other when you have a population that split down the middle are the majority is looking at it from one perspective or the other. So we're a community, and I think we have to kind of roll forward with the way that science presents itself at the time, especially when things are adjusting and shifting and changing. So that's the opinion. I thought it was a good job.
Sorry. Next up, we'll hear from mayoral candidate Chris Garrett. Chris.
Thanks. So quick answer for COVID. We didn't have a vaccine mandate at the Township of Amaranth. I supported a vaccine mandate at the County of Dufferin specifically for the reason that we have the Dufferin Oaks. And you know, I felt we needed to protect the immunocompromised and the elderly. So in the context of the larger questions about taking away freedoms, obviously not. But I think you always have to keep in mind that somebody needs to protect the young, the elderly, the immunocompromised, if we're talking about restrictions again that are related to health. So, thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Next up, we'll hear from mayoral candidate Heather Foster.
Yes, having someone in my house who is immunocompromised. Yes, we did within this household follow the mandates. As far as anyone else is concerned, at the township, I did not support having a mandatory vaccination program there. I would never, it's everybody's choice. Within places where there are elderly, young, and immunocompromised, absolutely, you have to protect those that can't protect themselves. As far as any other liberties have been taken away from us, I'm not certain that we've really suffered. We have to take a look back on what our grandparents and other people on this planet are going through right now, and we are very lucky. And I continue to be thankful that I live here every single day. And thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Next up, we'll hear from councillor candidate Brad Metzger.
Gotta say, very well said on what our ancestors and predecessors have been through for the freedoms that we do enjoy. Again, when we first entered this pandemic, we had a newborn child here that had emerged from a very high-risk pregnancy, and quite honestly, we were happy that he survived the pregnancy. And immediately we're faced with the pandemic. So did we follow the mandates? Absolutely we did. We no more than got into I guess it would be the second wave, and my wife was diagnosed with cancer. So I would just like to think that when people talk about freedoms, they at the same time take the time to think about what it means to other people in society, and that there are a lot of people out there that can't make a choice about whether or not they're going to be protected or not. And sometimes governments have to make choices that aren't popular opinion, but they're meant for the better good. And we've got to trust them that they're doing the best they can. There will be some trips, but they're doing the best they can. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad. I want to mention that I did consider skipping over the last couple of questions, but when we do these live, we have no clue what the questioner is going to ask. So I wanted to continue on with that integrity. The next question will be the last one we do live, and then we're going to go to our closing statements. But Diane and I have been texting. There's just a ton of really good questions on here. So if you give us 2 or 3 days and into next week, we're going to pick our 10 favorites, email them out to the candidates, and then those that choose to respond, we'll post them on the DUOT website sometime in the next week or week and a half and give you all some more exposure. And that'll make us feel a little better about some of the technical glitches we've had tonight too. So Tricia Linton, you'll get the first crack at answering this next question. Are you going to assist with getting Amaranth residents high-speed internet?
Of course. Coming into COVID, I had to, just a bit of background, I had to get up my plan on my cell phone to whatever gigs for my kids to be online. And it was not fun paying $600 to $700 a month for a hotspot for my children. So it's one of the things that I am passionate about, making sure that we have high speed in all homes, because I know what it is to, you live paycheck to paycheck. There's some families that live paycheck to paycheck, and it was difficult. And so I understand the constituents that out there that still do not have high speed internet, and it's frustrating. And so I echo that it's definitely on the agenda. And I hope as we get together as a team after election, that is something that's on the forefront for us to accomplish together. Thank you. And thank you for the question.
Thank you, Tricia. Next up, we'll hear from Deputy Mayoral Candidate Gail Little.
I absolutely support having high-speed internet available to all our residents. Certainly the last 2 years have proven the need to have it and the value in being able to access things through our internet. So I congratulate Chris Garrett, who has worked on the SWIFT project and is now, we are now getting fiber optic cable installed throughout our township. So it will be up to individual residents to take advantage of this opportunity and buy the service that is provided. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Andrew Stirk. Andrew.
So as outlined, I understand this correctly, that I wouldn't be standing in the way of it because I think it's already well on the way as I watched the lines crews on the 8th line putting the cables in the ground 2 days ago. Got to speak to them when I was putting my daughter on the bus. I know there's a planned timeline to do it. I'm not sure where the segregation line is on the side roads. The gentleman that day told me. My memory did not retain that, unfortunately. But basically, in answering the question, I believe it's already in motion to do so in the ground. So, why one would stand in the way of anything that's taking place there would be beyond me. I certainly wouldn't, because as a business owner and a house owner here, I'm just dying for that level of internet to get in so we can get some more work done. But overall, you wouldn't see me falling in line and stopping anything there.
Thank you, Andrew. Next up, we'll hear from Deputy Mayoral candidate George Grutka.
Yes, I can see now for the last, I should say over a year now, the crews installing all the fiber optics around the 10th side road, the 5th side road and everything else and all that will take a while because it's still be, I think by the next year is going to be done. Because what it happens now, they just put the lines to the houses, but the main, let's say fiber optic to the residential area is still not there. So it'll take a while. So for the time being myself, I got Bell, wireless Bell, which is connected directly to the tower, and I'm getting a pretty good signal and everything else. And I got a good internet for the time being. But when the fiber optics come to the house, I think that will be a bonus. That will be really, really good for everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, George. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Victor Ingmar-Pon. Victor.
Great, thanks. Yeah, as I noted in my opening, I'm director of digital sales and innovation, and was at home for the past couple of years with 4 kids doing remote learning on subpar internet. So I absolutely understand the pain. I went by the nickname 8-Bit Vic for a while there. It was staggering to try and go on camera and look like you were the leader of digital for your company. So yes, very tough and like I said, I think things are in motion. And I think if there's any gaps, then definitely we'll fight for that. If there's spaces where you're not getting the proper signal that you need, and that absolutely council will work to rectify any of those things. But my understanding is that the SWIFT project is well underway and moving forward. So can't wait for the coil of fiber to be connected next to the porch here. So absolutely.
Thank you, Victor. Next up, we'll hear from mayoral candidate Chris Garrett.
Thanks. Yeah, as mentioned, I've been the Dufferin County representative on the SWIFT project. So that is North Frontenac Telecommunications, and they have passed 638 homes. I've been working with Rogers through the ASIP program, the Accelerated High-Speed Internet program. They are the ones you see on all the other roads that aren't, 5th line and third line, and they're connecting every other premises in the township. Speaking to Rogers today, they are anticipating they'll have about 200 homes connected this fall, and then the rest in early 2023. So.
Thank you, Chris. Next up, we'll hear from mayoral candidate Heather Foster.
Yes, the person who never has video because her Wi-Fi and internet won't handle it is now speaking. And yes, they gave me my line to the road yesterday. I was cheering them on. And when they told me that, I probably wouldn't be hooked up till the spring of 2023. Yes, I was sad and dejected. Absolutely, high-speed internet will be pushed. My granddaughter was staying with us and doing online learning during the pandemic. It was a challenge. However, she still achieved. We need to have a good basis of communication for all the farms in the area. We need to have all our businesses, our local businesses, and of course, a farm is a local business. But yes, we need to have good resolution, good high speed, and we need it soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Next up, we'll hear from Councillor candidate Brad Metzger.
I too definitely will not stand in the way of any areas that aren't being serviced by what's being put in the ground now. Having spent quite a bit of time working from home, I had my own struggles where, to be honest, there were times I drove to Orangeville to pick up anything I could, or you hotspot and you blow your data right out of the water. It's no fun. And I do believe that all residents in the developed portion of Ontario should definitely have high speed and sequentially out as far as we possibly can and get everybody high speed. Yeah, fully support it, and thank you.
Thank you, Brad. The final crack at this question goes to Councillor candidate Susan Graham.
Yes, I fully support getting high-speed internet. Coming here 30 years ago and having my kids on the computer, we did the bell, we had the bell, you had to go onto the bell line and you could hear the ringing and all that stuff. And then finally you get connected, and it could last and it could not, depending on which way the clouds were moving. So I am 100% on board with high-speed internet. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. It's a particular issue for the myself at the Dufferin Board of Trade. It's an issue all across Dufferin. I'm sitting here in my office on what's considered Main Street Mono. And if one of our staff were to start streaming music, we get upload speeds of 200 kilobytes a second. We have a second, much smaller branch in Hanover, and they've got fiber. So it's got to get done. I understand Rogers is coming by here next March. I can't wait. So we're going to go to our closing remarks, and we'll continue on with the same order. So we'll start with Deputy Mayor candidate Gail Little. Gail.
You're muted.
Okay, that's the second time tonight I've done that. I really do apologize. I was not prepared, I guess. So I just wanted to thank everyone who participated today in this with this opportunity to ask questions. It's not easy being put on the spot and having the right words come. I will think of them much later. But I just wanted to say that with our many candidates, when you first join council, you think that problems are easily sometimes solvable. We just have to get some more money. However, money is very limited on all levels of government. The province and the federal governments do not give out the same grants and subsidies that they used to. So there is that challenge of financing infrastructure, making sure that we have the services and recreation facilities that our residents need, as we are a community that is continuing to face growth, and we must be able to provide our residents with adequate facilities for their use. So it's going to be an interesting next 4 years, and I think that there will be many challenges that we will have to face and work out solutions that will help us get through the crunch. So I'm looking forward to working with a new group of people in order to find resolution for these many issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Next up, we have Councillor candidate Andrew Stirk.
So I'll open by saying that I appreciate everyone who's joined us tonight, both from a participant standpoint, everyone looking to run for council, for mayor, deputy mayor, as well as everyone else who's joined to watch us. I truly look forward to next week, where there's an in-person debate. It's been, from a standpoint of a voter standpoint, great to listen to everyone's take on everything else on here. I hope I had some input that was relevant to everyone when the questions were asked. I hope that if we get to the election day, that when we go to vote, I truly believe there are some good people here that I see that will make a difference in our township, that will serve us. And I would like to be one of them. I believe I bring something to the table to do that. If not, I still feel confident that there are people here that will do a good job with that. And I hope they do. With that said, I would very much love the opportunity to be able to bring a different standpoint of just a different approach, maybe to some aspects of the council, but at the same time, should I not get in 4 years' time, I'd love to try this again. There's 4 years of growth to be taking place here. So I wish everyone well as we move forward. I think it's going to be good for us as a township, with what we see a lot of new faces coming on board here, to help grow and unite and create a home that, if you're not already proud of, you can very much be proud of, and a place that we can all do business in that is a great place to do business in. So I appreciate everyone, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll now hear closing remarks from Deputy Mayor candidate George Grutka.
Hi, I want to be able to work with the council in this, if I get elected, and I want to make a good environment. So the reason I'm getting involved into that, to attract all the people to work together. And the last 4 years has been a very difficult 4 years for our township about all the situation and issues being created in the council. So we have to work together. We have to look at the fiscal situation, finances. We have to look at the infrastructures, and we have to make a plan, which in the last, what I can see in the last couple of years, I don't see, and I didn't see anything like that. And also, we have to be transparent to our, people in Amaranth. So we have to be very available every time, and to build a more close-knit community. Use also, and we can look into it using our own community facilities for our people, for seniors, for children, develop certain, let's say, sports for in the summer, soccer, baseball, for the kids to bring the people around and celebrate together our place. So that's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Now we'll hear closing remarks from Councillor candidate Victor Ingmar-Pon. Victor.
Great, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us. It's been a pleasure to answer questions and talk to all of you. In the chat, I dropped in a connection to my website, so please learn some more about me there, and we can connect post this event and keep the conversation going. So I'd really appreciate that. I've heard from residents here in town already leading up to this with some emails directly to me and asking me, why should I vote for you? And it really gives me time to sit back and think about what is important to me. And I think one of the key things that we haven't talked about here, and I'm surprised a bit that didn't come through the questions, is just sustainability, greenhouse gases, how we work towards those items as well. And I know council, from watching some of the meetings back and stuff, there are efforts definitely working towards that. But just talking about leaning on some of the people that are developing in Amaranth Township's borders, and do we hold them to practices of construction that are less carbon producing? Do we build that narrative in our township and hold to some of those things? Because I think there is an environmental emergency upon us as well, that we, especially in our agricultural grounds here, that we really need to focus on that and continue that chat. So lots to be done there, and so I'm really looking forward to working with a group of really inspirational people, and it's been great candidates. So thank you very much for the banter, and looking forward to hopefully sitting with you and some of you and moving forward and getting council work done. So excited. So thank you all. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, Victor. We'll now have closing remarks from mayoral candidate Chris Garretts. Sorry, Chris.
That's okay. Thanks. So I've heard a lot about fiscal mismanagement. It's a real buzzword. It's in this context, by those pushing it, it's meaningless. So what is the fiscal mismanagement? We have no debt. We applied for a loan, which we did not get this year. So we have absolutely no debt. We haven't for the past 8 years they've been on council. To me, the fiscal mismanagement is the $500,000 approximately and counting costs that we're incurring due to the actions of some members of the current council. Fiscal mismanagement is pushing out a willing partner and now having to pay $250,000 per year in additional costs, as I outlined earlier. Fiscal mismanagement is a 30% increase in our legal fees over this term because for the same reasons. Fiscal mismanagement is canceling an official plan amendment halfway through when you've spent approximately $30,000 to $50,000 already to update an official plan that is 17 years old. That's a plan that needs to be done every 5 to 10 years. These are all things that happened. That to me is fiscal mismanagement. It's not a made up term that some of them are using with no backing. There's no backing, and I will go argue that point on the 13th with anyone that wants to, but that's the bottom line. In addition, I'd just like to point out that we do have a large commercial industrial development in the southeast corner that's going to bring over $1 million in taxes on an annual basis. So that's the kind of development we need. So thanks.
Thank you, Chris. We'll now hear closing remarks from mayoral candidate Heather Foster.
Yes. As far as fiscal mismanagement is concerned, every township, every municipality has faced increased costs over the last 2 years. Its fuel has gone up, insurance has gone up. So if our costs at the township have gone up, it's because they've gone up everywhere. The fact that the township that East Garifax left, they did leave. They were offered to pay rent. They chose not to pay rent and they left. And we had a meeting at the end of August, and it was their council and our council, and they made the decision to leave rather than pay rent. Our costs, I do not believe, have gone up because they left. I think that our costs have actually gone down, and I believe that our township is in a much better place. However, going over that, as a township, we are a community. We need to encourage that community feeling. Our parks and recs, yes, they need to be improved. However, we also need to listen to the people. This is not a thing that happens overnight. Property standards don't happen overnight. As Councillor Little has pointed out, we all go on to council thinking that we've got the answers to fix it all, and discover very quickly that what we think is a simple answer isn't quite that simple. I encourage everybody, and I've always encouraged everybody to run for council. I want people in there. You need different viewpoints. You need a different thought process. You need people who are willing to look outside of the box. We don't need any kind of personal agendas at council. We need to be working for the people of the township. And that's exactly what I intend to do, work for the township. So thank you very much. And thank you, DBOT, for having this.
Thank you, Heather. We'll now hear closing remarks from Councillor candidate Brad Metzger.
Thank you to everyone in attendance and everyone that's made this possible tonight. And seconding some comments from earlier, there's definitely some great candidates in the mix here, and there's no question in my mind that there will be a great council elected. Who it will be, we'll find out soon enough. Truly, I hope I'm one of those councillors. I'm not going to come to council saying I've got all the answers. Any of us that do obviously are a little misguided in their judgment. I've got lots of experience that I truly hope can help make the township a better place, help make some decisions that can bring some value that the citizens will all benefit from. We need to hear from the citizens as well. We've a lot of really good questions tonight. I'm really looking forward to the email and chance to respond to some of those questions. There are just some really good questions there. So all that being said, I'm looking forward for the opportunity, hopefully to be elected as one of your members of council, and with that bring some positive change that we're all looking for. Hopefully, definitely some of the infrastructure stuff is front and center for myself. But there's definitely other areas that I can contribute and truly hope to. Thank you all.
Thank you, Brad. We'll now hear closing remarks from Councillor candidate Susan Graham.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to everyone for listening and for putting the remarks in. As being a resident for over 30 years in Amaranth, I've seen a lot. We've had a builder who we bought our house from, went bankrupt, and another builder came in, and another builder came in, and then the township said, okay, we're just going to assume the subdivision. We've had a lot of problems with our water after Walkerton having to put a lot of money out. And our money that we were paying every year for our water went into a general account and not for any upgrades to our water system. We have now 2 subdivisions that want to come into Waldemar, which we really got to be careful about, especially with our water situation. And I just think that with my legal background and the municipal law that I do know, and the fact that I listen to everyone, I've gone around the neighborhoods, I've gone to the farms. I really think that we could pull this all together, and I think that we can make Amaranth really a fantastic place with our parks, with our township office. We have a great township office, has a lot of facilities for parties or bazaars or whatever we need to do. I think we can really make Amaranth great. I think we can put it on the map. And I think that everyone that is involved, people are looking for somewhere to take their children. Yes, we all have big backyards, but it's integrating with other kids, to play with other kids, to have teams. It's all important as part of our part of Amaranth. Like I said, I have no hidden agendas. I'm just looking forward to working with a council that we can really make some headway in this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. We'll now hear closing remarks from Councillor candidate Tricia Linton.
First and foremost, I want to thank everyone that's here this evening, all of your questions and your participation. And I apologize to those that didn't have their questions answered and have been here with that have had some comments or have expressed some concern or disappointment in the questions and the structure of the questions. My passion is the community. And I'm listening to everyone tonight, and everyone is so passionate about Amaranth. But what makes great leadership is being able to listen, and being able to listen to one another and to really hear what not just the people saying, but what we are saying at the table. I think everybody belongs at that table, and you need to vote for someone that's going to represent your voice, because times are not easy anymore. They're getting harder and harder with inflation, and the things that people and families have to meet up with is bringing food to the table. And I've had that opportunity to meet a lot of families, and some families that are paycheck to paycheck and having to bring food to the table and having a hard time doing that. We have issues, and I think we'd be blind not to see those issues. The past 9 months, I have spent my time feeding families that have been displaced in motels and bringing food to them, and understanding their needs and understanding where they feel that they need to be heard. And I think that it is important to understand everyone's needs, and it would be an honor to represent Amaranth in that way. One of the things that I would like to point out is a great council is one that is totally and completely unified. And I hope that you will vote for me, and that I will bring that sound voice of unity. Building communities and having your voices heard is important. So
Thank you,
I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tricia. I want to thank everyone that attended tonight's event. All those that are on here, they had some great questions, and we also heard some great answers. Amaranth is going to be in in good hands, whoever wins the vote on October 24th. Thank you we've learned a lot about local candidates and about some of the issues in Amaranth, and hope that you'll all get in and vote on October 24th. Candidate bios and information can be found on our website, www.dufferinbot.ca, and give us a better part of a week. We'll have these questions out to the candidates and those that choose to answer them. We'll post them on our website. I want to thank Diana Morris, who really does all the behind the scenes work. She has these questions for me should I ever need them, all these great notes, the timing sheet for me to keep track of things. Diana, way to go. Good job, like always. So remember to think local, think Amaranth, think Dufferin, and thank you all.